So who do we want to persuade? I thought I'd start there. So your bread and butter person to campaign to, whether you think you're a campaigner, whether you think you're just a person with opinions, you'll have an MP. And that MP thinks that representing you and constituents like you is part of their job. They're expecting to hear from you, and they are usually the first person to go to for pretty much any issue that's anything to do with climate change. An MP is a good person to go to. So be polite. Working for an MP, they get an astonishing amount of abuse from all kinds of people, many of whom say that they're Christians, which is unhelpful. Be personal. Don't say why you personally care about this. Don't feel you have to promise to vote for them, or don't say that you're not going to vote for them. That's fine to just imply it. Be persistent. So be polite, but don't be too polite. Keep going. If you don't get a reply, ask when the reply is coming. And do pray for the MP. They need it. It's a hard job. Don't feel you have to be an expert as well, because their job is just to represent you and your views, whatever they are. And chances, every MP is an expert on something, but the chances are you know more about this than they do on any given subject. Every day they will meet people who know more about it than they do. They're used to that. You don't have to know every last thing to be able to have a valid opinion. Don't make that mistake. So good ways to get in touch with your MP are writing to them, either by email, or most of them get emails. If you write in the post, that will stand out because not many people do, and you've had to pay for a stamp, which shows you really mean it. Ask to meet them on Zoom or in person. Most of them will have an appointment system. Tweet them. MPs do tend to notice Twitter, even if they say that they don't. If they've got a Twitter address, you can probably contact them that way. And say thank you. Most MPs hear lots of people say thank you and then immediately go on to say, and please, and ask for the next thing. But if you just say thank you, it'll stand out. So lots of things that we want to campaign on, that we want to get changed urgently, are to do with government. And the best way into government is not to write to the minister or the ministry, it's to write to your MP and ask them to pass your message on. That means that when the minister replies, they write back to the MP, they will personally see that reply. They might not bother to read all of it. They certainly probably didn't draft it, but it will at least come to their attention that MPs are writing to them about this thing. So that's the best route in. And it also has the advantage of showing your MP that you care about it. And MPs will take note, not necessarily of every single request that they get, but they will note, what are people writing to me about? What opinions am I hearing? So it's worth keeping climate continually in the mix for them. Councils are also often a target. We'll often want councils to improve what they're doing or to do new things. If it's something routine, like a local issue, like a cycle path that's overgrown or something like that, they'll have a website you can report it on, and that's an easy way. But do also ask your councillors, and councillors, think of them as mini MPs. Many of them want to go on to be MPs. Some of them used to be MPs, and treat them the same kind of way, but expect them to have fewer resources and less time. And almost nobody ever bothers to pray for their councillors, by the way, so feel free. Companies are a different kettle of fish. So councillors and MPs think part of their job is to represent you. Companies don't think that. If you're a customer, they're interested in your opinion. If they're sensitive to public opinion about them, they might be, but they don't think they have a duty to reply to you or listen to you particularly. So if it's something like a supermarket with a customer service desk, you can go up to that, or they'll have an online version. If you contact their social media, they're often quite sensitive to that, and especially in large numbers. Online petitions are not the best way to get to your MP, but they often are to companies. Right. I wanted to step back and think, what are we trying to do? What do we mean by campaigning? And I think there are two different things. So one is something like getting a historic treaty signed. And here is Boris Johnson signing the Brexit treaty. You'd think he'd look more cheerful, actually, wouldn't you? But there he is. That's one thing, is getting the decision maker to make the decision you want. But the other one, this is how Jim Wallace, great US campaigner, said it, is recognizing that most politicians don't have a burning sense of purpose, or not on every topic. So sometimes they know what they want to achieve and they're setting out to achieve it. But more often, they're licking their finger, they're putting it in the air, and they're working out which way the wind is going and going that way too. So a lot of campaigning is not just about getting a particular decision, it's about changing the wind. It's about changing common sense. It's about setting the public mood. And both of those things are useful. You can often put them together, and each time you win something, a concrete change from your council or the government or whoever it might be, that helps show them that the public mood has shifted, that the wind has changed, and they will notice that. But remember, you're trying to do both of those things at once most of the time. Okay, and then I wanted to share a few extra tips. So pray. This is particularly what we as Christians bring to campaigning. Make allies. Don't try and change the whole world on your own. It's too big for that. And remember, God has other people he can use as well as you. It's not all down to you. So do join in with other people. And I'd recommend a whole bunch of campaigning organisations, starting with my own one, of course. I would recommend going to tearfund.org/reboot and joining our campaigning there, because it's awesome. There are lots of other great campaign groups, particularly on climate, and here are some of my favourites: 350.org, Friends of the Earth, Christian Aid, Avaz, Possible, and 38 Degrees. If you absolutely love campaigning, join them all. Otherwise, just pick one or two. If you've got time to get involved locally, join a local group if you find one, or start one with friends if you can't find one locally. It's much easier to keep going with a group of people, and it's also, your voice is much more powerful. Thinking about media can be a worthwhile tactic. Contact your local media. MPs and councillors notice it. It's worth writing letters. It's worth sending them press releases. It's worth tweeting them and trying to get coverage for your campaigns and your opinions. But they're also a worthwhile target. So thinking about what we were saying about changing the wind, changing the public mood, it's worthwhile contacting a media you know, your favourite paper or news website or whatever it might be, radio phone-in if you like doing that kind of thing, and complaining about bad climate coverage and praising for good. That's got a good chance of getting noticed. They won't admit it, but it's got a good chance of shifting what they do in the future. But if you're just commenting at the end of news pages, that's got a good chance of nobody important ever reading it. So I wouldn't necessarily do that unless you enjoy the argument. It's always better to offer a solution as well as pointing out the problem if you can. Say, don't do this, but do that is better than just don't do this, but don't do this is still worth saying. New ideas get attention, and the school strikes I thought were a brilliant idea, because no one had ever heard our young people saying, we need to leave school one day a week because we need to teach you adults something. That was amazing. But like YCCN, taking an old idea, an ancient idea like a pilgrimage, and giving it a new spin is very powerful. It catches the attention. Smile. It's much easier to keep going when it's fun, and people are more likely to stay with you, and it's more likely to be eye-catching. And celebrate when you win. It's worth stopping and celebrating before you proceed immediately on to the next thing that you want. And that's my last point, really, is keep going. It's never the last battle, win or lose. The world is never either perfect or hopeless. So rest, smile, decide what you're going to campaign for next.